His heart is all about forgiveness, and even when you bend, break, or walk away, the Lord will always take you back. For aspiring songwriter and country music artist Corey Layne, traditional country music runs deep into his family roots. Corey, a third-generation musician born and raised in the foothills of the Cumberland Plateau in East Tennessee, has desired to bring old-style country music back to life. But his life hasn't always been easy. His new song, Bend or Break, is all about his radical redemption. This is his story. This is today's Nashville. This is faith. Corey, your name has been buzzing around, not only in Nashville, but everywhere. Thank you so much for inviting me into your church.
Well, this is a place where people come and who are broken, and and I was broken. Well, I just love this place. So.
Well, it is an honor to sit down with you. I mean, I've had people call me and say, you have to talk to Corey Layne. So
it's an honor to sit with you too.
Thank you. Tell me how you got to this place from the hills of East Tennessee.
Southeast Tennessee. Yeah. South Pittsburgh, Tennessee.
Let's go back and then tell me how God has led you through. You have an amazing story.
At a young age, being from South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, it was a town back then of 1,500 people. We maybe have 3,000 people there now. It's well known for lodge cast iron skillets and stuff like that. That's where they're made. But I was a pastor's kid, and as you can tell, and I just tell everybody I was beat up in the 3rd grade, and they colored on me, and it wouldn't wash off. So, I went through some traumatic stuff at a young age. I didn't have a childhood. I have a couple of memories of good times, but I don't really have many.
Can you share what happened, or what was?
Yeah, from the age of about 4 or 5, it's hard to gauge that when you're that young, but age 4 to 5 until I was about 12 years old, I was actually raped and by a couple of family members and another person, and it went on for years, and it just you could see pictures at my mom. She'll look at a picture, and she'll see another picture, and she says, I see the difference, in the smile. One, I'm just cheesing, and the other one, I'm just sad. And so that led me down a long road of addiction. And
did you not tell your parents or anything?
I ended up telling my parents, I think I just turned 18 or I was 17, about to turn 18. And I told them because one of the people that had done it to me was about to pass, and I needed to get it out, because if I didn't, then I felt like I would have an issue. But it did give me a lot of issues, and I went through a lot of stuff as growing up. It wasn't easy, especially being a pastor's son.
And you were going to church and everything and couldn't tell anybody?
Yeah, no. I had a gun put to the back of my head at about 4 or 5 years old and said, if you say anything, I'm going to kill your mom, your dad. So I didn't say anything until, it was close to that time. But God takes things like that. I always say God allows things to happen. And I believe that God allowed that to happen, because if He would not have allowed it to happen, and I know it's hard, and people ask a question, why all the time? Why this and why that? Well, that's not for us to, we can't really answer those questions. And God, He created the earth. We were born into sin, And there are sinners on the earth, and there are bad people on the earth. That's why it happened. But if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have been able to reach some of the people I've been able to reach, just from that alone. It led me down a long road of drugs. The drugs were hard.
How old were you then?
I actually started when I was about 17. August 17th of this year will be 7 years, year completion. Yeah, I'll be clean 7 years, August 17th of this year.
Tell me what happened during those, teenage years, and were you walking with the Lord, or did you walk away?
Actually, early teens, I was walking with God. But then I started getting made fun of in high school because I sang. So they started using words, derogatory things towards me about it. So I had to prove them wrong. And by doing that, I ended up, I had a daughter at 17. And it was, she's great. She's beautiful.
How old is she now?
She's 20.
20.
Yes, she's 20. Woo. I did, but she wasn't a mistake at all. She's a blessing. I was a bad father for a long time because of the issues that I had, and when I finally decided after everything had happened to change, I wanted to be a good dad again, and I wanted to be a good man. I always say God put his finger in the ground and literally pulled me out of hell. I overdosed over 17 times. It was bad.
When was that time that God just pulled you out and said, "Okay, Corey"?
I went through a windshield, actually. I was driving, going about 65, 70 miles an hour. And I always say God put a fire hydrant in front of the highway because it was heavy traffic day. And I took too many drugs and I blacked out. And when I blacked out, I came to when I had went off the road and tried to turn off, hit a fire hydrant, went through the windshield. And, if there was a before and after, you'd see this big scar or this big cut of stitches on my face. I have bones still in my face that are not okay. And but a man pulled over the side of the road, and I kept trying to look at his face. And he actually got me out of the truck, and he somehow, I don't know where the bottle of water came from, but he had a bottle of water in his hands, and he poured the bottle of water on his finger, and he put his finger in my face, and he just kept doing that, and then he touched the back of my neck, and he said, "Is there anything I can do for you, son?" And I kept trying to see him, and it was like looking at the sun, literally. And I was mad, and I said, "No." So after the wreck and everything, it was a little bit, later down the road, I decided to get help. I went to, and I'm not ashamed to say I went to rehab and decided to make a change in my life, but that was the day. But when I left rehab, nobody wanted me to come home, and I ended up sleeping in the snow in Pigeon Forge for about 3 days. I had these women pull up, and they said, "Hey, do you want to go up to our cabin?" And they were using, and I was like, no. And nobody wanted me to come home. But then, do you know when you just say, "I'm done, I give up"? That's what I did, and I put my head down and said, "I just give up, God. I've been serving you for a year now, and what for?" And then all of a sudden, after I did that, this old man pulled up, and he looked at me, and he said, he grinned, he said, "Is there anything I can do for you, son?" And I knew the voice. And he said, "Get in the car." And he said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "I want to go home. I just want to go home." So he called a family member, and the family member said that they felt compelled to say yes. And, the whole time We were riding from Pigeon Forge to Knoxville to the bus station because he was going to take me. He paid for me to get a bus ticket. He fed me, but he was smiling, tears rolling down his eyes, and he was telling me he loved me and how much he had loved me my whole life. How the things about me that nobody else knew. He was going in depth, and I was just like, wow, what is going on here, you know? And then he gave me a phone number after he had dropped me off, and he grabbed me, hugged me, told me he loved me, just started crying. He said, now make sure you call this number. It's the same number I called from, but here's a piece of paper, and call me right as soon as you get home. And I was like, okay. And I got home. I said, hey, I need to call the number that called the phone. I've got the number right here. It's the same number. When I called, it was a lady that answered the phone. And I said, I need to speak to so-and-so. I can't even remember the name now. And she said, there's not been a man here that's lived here in about 25, 30 years. And I said, no, this was a cell phone. This guy came, he called this phone. I'm returning the call. He wanted me to call him and let him know I was okay. And she said, honey, this is a landline. She said, this isn't a cell phone. And I knew I was in the presence of God.
Yeah.
I knew.
Corey, we're going to pick up that right where we left off in a minute, and we're going to find out who that man was.